Kings Island has had a lot of rides come and go throughout its history, and one of my favorites was Wheel of Fortune. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. Thank you, Aaron Bort, 330T, Logan Lipper, Brian Hauser, Lil Mac 21, Miss Mandy 1983, Jacob Fix, Stephen Hornack, Damon Barnes, and Eric Grau. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get exclusive content, early access to the videos, members only live streams, and hey, some tiers even get some free stuff.
Yeah, Wheel of Fortune, an original Kings Island attraction, opened at the park in 1972, was there until 1984. So, Ryan, you missed out on this one.
I was way too young to ride it when they removed it, but it looks like a fun ride. I remember from the Brady Bunch episode.
Yeah, it was a Trabant ride themed as a roulette wheel. Chance Rides was the manufacturer for it, located next to the Kings Mills log flume. In that area of the park, it was known as Rivertown at that time for the log flume and this ride, so it was in that section of the park. But when you rode it, you spun in a counterclockwise rotation on the outside of a large disc that tilted 30 degrees upward. I remember it was one of the first rides that I rode at Kings Island. It wasn't my first ride, but it was in that first 5 or 6 rides that I rode. It was just a lot of fun to experience when you were there with family or friends. I remember riding it several times with Carl Eichelman between Beast and Racer rides. We just would say, "Hey, let's go ride Wheel of Fortune," because it was just one of those rides that was fun. Now this one was actually built for Kings Island. There was some that argued when the park first opened that it had been transported from Coney Island. They had a very similar ride called Cloud 9, which opened in 1966, but Cloud 9 was replaced by the Scrambler in 1969. And that one, Cloud 9, was more one of those portable type models versus the permanent model that Wheel of Fortune was.
Yeah, I've heard the debate that some people thought that it was a transplant, but it was not. So that particular model, the Cloud 9, only lasted for a few years then, if it was replaced by the Scrambler in 1969, correct?
Right. And like I said, it was one of those portable ones that you would see at a carnival. So it wasn't like a permanent structure type ride when it was at Coney Island. Did ride that one, Cloud 9. I was, very, very young, but I do remember riding that. But the one at Kings Island, after 1984, it was sold to Fantasy Farm, Middletown, Ohio. So some may have experienced the ride there after its removal from Kings Island, and then later sold to Bland's Park, which is now Del Grosso's amusement park, where it still operates today. It's called Casino, but if you want to ride this ride, you can still do that at Del Grosso's amusement park. That's located in Pennsylvania. I want to say Tipton, Pennsylvania, I think. And its location now occupied by Linus's Launcher. So if you walk around the park, you're like me. You remember the 70s and the 80s. I can picture what was in those spots before. So normally when I'm in that area of the park, which is now considered Camp Snoopy, I think about Wheel of Fortune, being there. And you mentioned featured on the Brady Bunch. So that's one of those scenes that they have with Carol and Alice or by that ride. And, during its time, it wasn't a high capacity ride, but it still gave, more than 6.5 million rides. So, it was normally a ride that, there were people wanting to ride it, waiting to ride it. It just wasn't the highest capacity attraction.
That was my thought too. I'm looking at our show notes, and 6.5 million rides when it was only at the park for
12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. And I was like, there's no way this is high capacity. So it probably garnered some lines.
Oh yeah, there was always a wait for it. I mean, it was never something you would go to in the middle of the day and you just walk up and get on. I mean, there was a wait for it. It was usually 20, sometimes 30 minutes to ride it. But it's just one of those rides that I miss having more flat rides at Kings Island. They had some great ones back in the day, and I miss that. Some of the ones they brought in, they're fun in that, but still, there's rides like Wheel of Fortune Cuddle Up, Haley's Comet, rides like that I really miss that were there, no longer there now. So, I think about this ride often.
Yeah. So what do you think attributed to the park removing it? Do you think that they were just making way for new attractions? Because clearly it wasn't at the end of its service life because it's still alive now.
Still alive now. No, just one of those rides that, the capacity, was probably the main reason why they did it. Nothing was really, said about that. I knew in 1984 that it was going to be sold. I did not do the last, ride or anything on it, but, I was aware that it wasn't going to return in 1985. Uh, PR department had kind of, told me that if you want to ride it now. But I knew that it was still going to be possible to ride it because it was just going, in Middletown, Ohio at Fantasy Farm. So I could still ride it if I wanted to. So I didn't really think too much about it at the time. But then after it was gone and, that summer, it just kind of felt like that void there, as you approached the log flume. The Wheel of Fortune wasn't there. Other rides, Sunshine Turnpike, later years, that was removed in that. So there's a lot of rides that, I wish were still there that aren't now. That there's no reason that they shouldn't have been there because they're still, like I said, operational today with Wheel of Fortune and Sunshine Turnpike. That could have still been running today if they'd wanted to. I mean, you see some of these other parts of these older rides, at Kennywood. So there's no reason that you couldn't have kept those around if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, Kennywood's a perfect example of keeping these flat rides going, because it's probably a heck of a lot cheaper to replace steel on this than it is, replacing an entire roller coaster track. But do you have
Yeah.
any particular memories of this ride that stick out to you? Any fond, fuzzy memories?
You, it's just the fun that you had with family and friends. I mean, I can think of the different friends that I rode it with. My brother and my sister, I rode it with. Carl Weichelman riding it with. Other members of the American Coaster Enthusiast, riding it. So it's that's the thing that you remember the people that you experienced it with. I think that's what stands out to me. And um, I miss these kind of attractions, and that's one of the things I love about Kennywood because that history's still there. The turtle is still there. Uh, the kangaroo is still there. So it was an easy thing to take out, but I think when you think about memories at Kings Island, oftentimes it's rides like this because of the fun, doing it with family and friends. Those kind of rides stand out sometimes more than the coasters do.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Well, definitely a cool ride. I'm glad we were able to have this discussion. You said that you couldn't just wander onto it in the middle of the day, but according to
No,
the
there was
Brady
to be
Bunch,
a
that's
wait
not
point.
true because I'm pretty sure Alice just wandered
Yeah.
directly onto it.
Yeah, I mean that was my experience in the in the 70s and 80s. That normally in the 70s we went, it was a Saturday or Sunday, so it was going to be a little more crowded. But in the 80s, I was there, in 1982, almost every day.
Mm,
1983, almost every day. 84, almost every day. So when I would go to ride it, I mean there was a wait for it. It wasn't. Just walk up and get on. I didn't, maybe that when they had the dead week at the end of August, you could do that. But on most days, you know, people wanted to ride it. Now, it wasn't something that, because of the motion in that, wasn't something I wanted to ride several times a day. I certainly wasn't doing that, but I'd ride it. If somebody wanted to go ride it, I was certainly doing that. It wasn't something I rode every single day, but I still rode it, I would say 4 or 5 times a month.
yeah, it seemed like a cool ride. Let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell.
All right, Ryan, are you buying or are you selling the old time photos in Rivertown that will be retired and replaced with a new indoor bar?
Did someone say bar? I'm going to sell this simply because they have the bar almost directly across the street from it, which isn't that big of a sell at this point when it comes to Kings Island. Um, I think that it should be a bar. They shouldn't have done the one in front of the train station, which they somehow can staff, but they can't staff the drink stand directly behind it. Um, it would be cool if they put one in there and made it like a saloon kind of theme, kind of like the Red Garter Saloon at Cedar Point. I'm going to sell it though. I don't think it's going to happen. What about you?
So don't see it happening. I do like that idea though. I wasn't thinking that the Red Garter Saloon like they have at Cedar Point, but that would have a nice, cool feel to it.
Yeah, that would be really neat. Have some good seating. Um, the problem is if they did something cool with it, it would never be open. That would be my fear, where it's like, um, it's easy to have these walk-up bars where you can staff them and then just drop a canvas when you don't want to open them. But when you actually have to staff it and there's seats in there and stuff. I mean, look at like Starbucks. They close that at 6 or 7 o'clock every night just because I guess they don't want people hanging out in there, and that might be a concern with that. So I guess they're going to encourage day drinking in this fantasy of a of a Rivertown bar.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it'll still be there. I mean, that's kind of history tradition too at Kings Island, the old time photos that families could do. So I'd hate to see it go.
It's got to make money. It's been there forever. All right. So let's move on to some Six Flags headline news. So today, the Six Flags headline news is that Dorney Park has announced its 2025 seasonal events, which includes the Stars Spangled Nights, July 4th through the 6th, Viva La Fiesta, July 19th through August 17th. That is a heck of a run for that thing. Tricks and Treats, September 13th through October 26th, and Halloween Haunt, September 12th through October 25th. Let's
Every
pedal
day.
Viva La Fiesta.
Every day it seems like every day it seems like another Six Flags Park announcing their event schedule.
And the Viva La Fiesta runs for like a month.
It's got a pretty good long run there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool. Hopefully it's a cool event because let's be honest here. I mean, somebody asked in a previous episode if Grand Carnival was going to be replaced by that. That's a distinct possibility. But if they're going to run it for, essentially 4 weeks, and then it's a pretty cool event, I mean, maybe the trade-off won't be that bad. Because Carnival only runs for like 10 days nowadays.
I think they're going to have this at every single park. You're going to get to that point. You're going to need to go get your Viva La Fiesta credits and visit all the different parks and experience the events and kind of compare how they all measure up against each other. So it's something to get credits on, I guess, now with as many parks that are going to have it.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not just, it's probably not going
It
to.
looks good though.
It does look good. I mean, it's not going to have
the food looks really good. The entertainment part of it is encouraging to hear that it's going to be part of a component of this. So yeah, I certainly am interested in this event. Whether it comes to Kings Island or not, we don't know. But if it doesn't and it remains Grand Carnival, I'll certainly try to visit one of these other parks that has it and see what it's all about.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing the reports on those. We'll be right back with the listener questions. First listener question, Randy from Cincinnati. He said, "My family and I are big fans of Tower Topics. The way the park treats you is despicable, yet you never waver. You stand your ground and consistently put out 3 new shows a week, despite all the challenges the park throws your way. Keep up the great work." Now, to my question, why did the park remove the pond and the other water features around the Beast Station? Good question.
Well,
I get asked that a lot.
Thanks for being a fan of the show. We appreciate that. That's a good question. We get that every now and then. I hear it while I'm at the park sometimes. Somebody recognizes me in the Beast line will mention what happened to the water that was here. It lasted from the time the ride opened, 1979 through 1986. But there were several reasons for it. Number one, it was tough to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Guests seemed to use it as a big trash area. Instead of throwing their cups and hot dog wrappers and hamburger wrappers and that into a trash can that were lining through the queue, you could find a trash can within 20, 30 feet of you. They would toss it into the water. So it was kind of tough to maintain from that standpoint. There would be issues. As you got deeper into the summer with mosquitoes, sometimes at night, that was another thing that was a little bit of a problem with it. And then also the vortex opening up took up a little bit more real estate closer to the Beast than the Bat did. And there was a need to have a little bit more access in that for maintenance vehicles. to move back and forth and get around that area of the ride. So it's several. It wasn't like one specific thing. There were several things that played into it, but one of the bigger ones was just that it was just tough to maintain it with all the guests throwing their trash and that into the water.
Yeah. Mosquitoes were the number one thing, I believe. I think that was the one. That was why people were kind of okay with it, because they weren't getting eaten by mosquitoes while they were in line for the beast.
Yeah, I don't remember the mosquitoes that much though. I knew they were there, but it never really bothered
Mm-hmm.
me while I was in line. I rode a lot of night rides in the 1980s. I would finish up my day at the park with a night ride on the Beast, and never really had much of a problem, with them. You would see them as you got into August a little bit more. It
Mm-hmm.
would be a little more frequent then. But I do remember seeing a lot of times where you'd find those cups and that in the water. You could buy the drinks in the Beast queue back in that era, and people by the time you're moving like 8 or 9 different rows of it, and by the time you were getting ready to go up the ramp and toward the station, you're done with your drink, and they would just toss it over and into the water. And I think that definitely was a contributing factor.
Yeah.
So we got Candy from Middletown, Ohio. Any word on the entertainment and events lineup for Kings Island this year? Not yet, as of this recording.
Yeah, I mean, when they announce the entertainment, that's going to be an episode. So it's you're not going to find out via listener question. There's rumors going around that Brad Ross, the illusionist magician, shall we say, may be doing a tour of several Six Flags parks. Maybe Kings Island's one of them. There's also a rumor that Gazillion Bubbles might come back, which would be really, really cool. But no, when's the entertainment announcement? Like, back in your experience, when was that typically announced? It was in this like early spring, right? Like, it wasn't this early, was it?
The entertainment part of it would often be announced as we got into February, beginning of March, 5 or 6 weeks out from the start of the season. A lot of the shows didn't really start until after Memorial Day,
Yeah.
so there wasn't the big rush for it. Now the events and that sometimes would be published a lot earlier than they have. Right now we're in mid-February and they're not out yet, so sometimes that would happen. Right after the first of the year, you'd get at least some of the staples, some of the returning events would be listed out. But
Right.
yeah, we're waiting like everyone else.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a good feeling about the entertainment this year for some reason, despite everything facing the opposite direction of like they're going to cut this and they're going to cut that. I've got this odd feeling that we're going to be surprised because, frankly, Don, I feel like we've been pleasantly surprised quite a bit the last 2 years. Every time that we thought it was doom and gloom, it's like at worst it was like, oh, that's not so bad.
Right.
Joe from Erlanger, Kentucky, he said, "You really shouldn't have done an episode questioning whether River Racers is a true water coaster." That came out today, so this is a very fresh question. You're definitely.
Start that one over. Don't say it came out today because this is like a week later.
Oh yeah.
That was waiting for me right when I got up this morning.
Okay. Next one's Joe from Erlanger, Kentucky. He said, "You guys really shouldn't have done an episode on whether River Racers is a true water coaster. You're definitely not invited to Media Day now. Do you think River Racers will be a hit, or will it fall flat like Camp Snoopy and Adventure Port?" Thanks for the question, Joe.
I think it will be a hit with the regulars that they go to Kings Island. Soak City Water Park is a big reason why they buy their season pass. So I think it'll be a big hit with that audience. I don't think it will be something that brings the aquatic fans from throughout the region, or the country to come experience it like you see at some other parks that have these big, long, record-breaking water coasters. It's not going to do that, but I think for the locals, I think it'll be very well received. I think it'll be a good addition for Soak City. I think guests are going to like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be popular. I think it's going to serve a function within Soak City. But you mentioned Camp Snoopy and Adventure Port. And I think that is the way that this is going to look when it opens. I think that it's going to open. It's going to be very quiet. You're never going to hear about it again. Um,
Yeah, I think those other two, I don't want to call it a miss. There just wasn't a lot of buzz and excitement about either one when they opened. They didn't open with the park at the beginning of the year, that being part of it. For me, Adventure Port, it looks great. The theming, everything looks nice through there. The two new rides are great. What they did with Adventure Express, breathing new life into that new entrance and everything. I think that was all very very well done. So I mean, it looks great, but for me, there's still kind of that disconnect with it. I would have preferred that they just breathe new life into Oktoberfest, and those rides were part of Oktoberfest rather than trying to create this new area of the park. I don't think most of the guests going through there still consider it Oktoberfest. The longtime guests and everything do. So I think that was kind of, to me, where the miss was, that they tried to force a new section of the park that really wasn't a new section. It was just renaming a part of the midway. They're walking around that corner as you're going from Action Zone to Coney Mall. With Camp Snoopy, I think the kids area has never looked better, never been better than it is right now. I just think timing, kind of plagued that one a little bit with it opening late and just not getting that launch that I would have really liked to have seen. That would have had more people talking about it.
do you think it'll open on time, River Racers?
I do.
I think so too.
We're talking Memorial Day, and it's
Yeah.
it's not it's 500 feet. It's not that big of a structure to build to begin with. So I do think it'll open on Memorial Day with Soak City Water Park. I don't see that being an issue.
Yeah. And I like a lot of the things you said. I think it'll be very popular with locals. Um, will it sell any tickets? I don't think so. I don't think it's that interesting, really. But with that being said, I don't want to dog on the ride itself because the ride looks kind of
It'll be
cool.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a lot of fun. It's just, there is that, like you mentioned about, that debate. Is it really a water coaster? Is it not a water coaster? Some will care, some won't care. It's going to be fun. We know that. But it's not something that, when you knew that it was time to put something new in Soak City Water Park, they didn't go big.
yeah.
They went the conservative route. I would have tried to put something in there that was 1,500, 2,000 feet long, somewhere in that range, and something you could really make a lot of noise with. This is great for the locals. Like you said, it's not going to sell a lot of tickets. Not going to bring a lot of people from outside the Cincinnati Dayton area. Aren't going to make a visit to Kings Island specifically to do this. That they weren't planning to go to the park to begin with. It's not bringing that kind of guest in there. It's something that's just supplementing what they have.
Based on what we've seen the last couple of years, do you think that it matters if it's 500 feet or 2,500 feet, though? Because I feel like it's those who know will know. Um, they weren't going to make a big splash no matter what the hardware was. So I'm almost wondering if putting in something that's a little less expensive is the correct business decision. Because I mean, Adventure Port could have had extra theming. It could have had a third flat ride. It could have had a roller coaster, for God's sakes, and it still would.
Yeah. No, what do you now? When I talked about, I would have preferred that they just had Breathe New Life and called it still Oktoberfest. Did you like that they added a new theme name for it, or would you prefer it stayed Oktoberfest? I mean, how did you feel about that
I think it's an upgrade over Oktoberfest simply because most people don't know Oktoberfest is a thing. To be honest with you,
anymore? Right?
right? I mean, it was a big deal. Remember, we did an episode called "What the Heck Happened to Oktoberfest."
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
But do you think though, because Oktoberfest is now the Fest House and Viking Fury, that should have maybe also been woven into this?
I mean, that would be a Spanish theme versus. Are you saying like should they have upgraded it and made it German themed rather than?
I don't know, but I mean, Oktoberfest is it used to be that whole area back there. You had several different rides that are long gone now. And, you did bring a couple of the rides back for this new area, but it's still a very small footprint for Adventure Port. And it's, you got Soul Spin, you've got Cargo Loco, and you've got the restaurant. So that's what Adventure Port is.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you say we're opening a whole new area of the park, that's how that was positioned. It's not a whole new area. It's just a rebrand, renaming of a certain section of the park.
This is what comes to mind with this sort of stuff. I go to Disney a lot, and I go at Epcot. That's my favorite park down there, and they've got the World Showcase, and you can go to Italy, and Italy has its own shop and its own restaurants, and a lot of them have their own rides and like a video and stuff like that. And then you go to Grand Carnival, and it's like India has its own tent. You know, um,
Right.
and I understand that. Like, I don't expect Grand Carnival to be the World Showcase. Like that's foolish. But with that being said, I feel like parks often, not just Kings Island, fall into the trap of we're going to repaint the buildings and now it's called something else. You know, um, like, and let me give you an exception. Like, Area 72, which was kind of like a lost section of, I mean, they called it X Space for a while, although it was never officially X Space on the map, although the sign said X Space.
Right.
That completely changed the look and feel of that area. It wasn't the new section of the park, but I don't feel like that was entirely positioned that way. But with this, two new rides and some paint. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Like, Adventure Port looks great.
It looks great. You're right. I mean, it does. It looks phenomenal.
But you're right. It's, you walk through and it's like, don't blink. It's going to be over soon. So I think that the Adventure Port thing is probably more marketable than the German stuff. Like I said, I don't think that people in Cincinnati are as in tune with their German heritage as they were 50 years ago.
No, they're not.
But at the same time, if you're going to have a themed area, make it so people know about it. So it's, the area surrounding Enrique's is what Adventure Port is.
Yeah. But it also circles back to what you said about river racers. And had it been bigger, longer, whatever, did it really matter because it's going to open and you never hear about it again.
Right.
So once Adventure Port opened, and have we heard about Soul Spin, Cargo Loco, Adventure Express? We heard about all of this since it opened in 2023.
Oh, no. And in fact, with Adventure Port, I have to think like, hey, where are you at?
And that supports what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm in Adventure Port. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but it supports what you're saying about, had they gone bigger in Soak City, would it really have mattered? Because after it opens, no one's going to hear about it again. So you're right in some degree, with what you're saying there.
Do you think that they knew that going into this, and that's why we ended up with a 500-foot water coaster?
I don't know that they thought about that. I think it came down to, here's how much money you have, here's what we can do. I don't think it was something where they said, do you want this or do you want that? I think it was just, here's what we can do. Here's the budget for this.
Well, okay. Well, let me reposition my question. So let's say back when you were doing the PR stuff, and this is definitely gonna, like, there's no way to take this without like sounding arrogant, but let's be honest here. When you were the PR guy, if they opened a ride or something, you were very good at keeping it in front of people, at least for the rest of the season.
Yeah. And there were rides there that opened in 1972. I was still keeping in front of people with feature stories. There was, things you'd seen on the AP wire, be all over the region and stuff, the train, the scrambler, stories like that. So every ride still was top of mind. I didn't forget about anything. I tried to make sure that I'm still talking about things. The Beast, I still made sure, even today with my own blog on that, I talk about that a lot. I talked about the history of the racer a lot. So I always looked at the new rides were silver, but these other attractions were gold.
Well,
So don't forget about them. So keep it in front of people. But yeah, I mean, you wanted to keep, throughout the year, I would, like with Snoopy Soapbox Racers, there would have been things that I would have done more testimonials with families,
mhm.
what they thought about it throughout the summer. I would have done things with it gave its 100,000th ride, 200,000th ride, however many it gave. It's not a high capacity ride, so those numbers aren't going to be super impressive. It's not like Orion opening and you have your 1 millionth rider on it. But you think about it, since I left there, you haven't seen any kind of, thing about the rides giving their, 55th millionth or 60th millionth, 10 millionth, 12 millionth, and those things have happened. So I've left. So there's not that awareness. They're not using that kind of stuff to leverage it the way I did. And it was a way to several times a year, to circle back, if Diamondback, when that opened, when it gave its 500,000th ride, that was mentioned when they hit the 1 millionth ride that year, what the final number was that year, tying in how many feet of coaster track the park now had, um, everything about it, talking about the trains, doing a separate feature on stadium style seating and how that was different than other coasters in the United States at the time. So there's all different kinds of ways to keep it top of mind, and that's what I did. And you haven't really, like you said, it sounds arrogant or whatever, but you haven't seen that, since I left the PR chair. They haven't really focused on that kind of thing. It was more of the standards. Here's opening day. Silk City opens now. Oh, it's the 4th of July. Daily operations ending. Here's our new attraction for next year. Now we're at Halloween Haunt. Now we're at Winterfest. So the standards, they talk about, but I tried to keep the park and all of the attractions, tried to give them all some love, throughout the year where I could.
Well, my thought is this though. So when Diamondback opened, um, I would argue that that was kind of the dream team of marketing. You had Schaefer and that whole crew. Um, probably,
Great team. I mean, now that you mention, I mean, what a team we had in 2009 there.
I wonder if knowing that this is a completely different corporate. This is Dick Kinzel's Cedar Fair, so we're like 3 generations ago. But with that being said, I wonder if knowing that they felt comfortable putting, a 20 something $1 million roller coaster in during the height of a recession, knowing that like they'll be able to take care of it, they'll be able to get in front of people, we'll be able to get our return on investment. It won't be just put in and then you never hear from it again. Well, nowadays, I wonder if it's like, well, they just kind of clerk out the stuff, Winterfest, Soak City opening day, the stuff that you mentioned. So like, let's minimize that. So, the ROI is like a little bit easier. Like, I wonder if that's known and that's factored into it, because let me give you an example. Jeffrey Siebert down there at Fiesta, Texas, he knows how to make waves. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
dream team. He's got one of the best teams in the chain right now. And they're letting him retheme rides, have rides repainted just for the sake of, changing it from Batman to Catwoman, whatever. They're letting him spend money hand over fist simply because they know that he knows what he's doing. So
He, yeah, he and his team down there at Fiesta, Texas. I mean, exactly, what they're doing. He's making a lot of noise, and that noise is going to sell tickets and sell season passes. All the things he's doing. So yeah, I mean, you have to be able to have the people in place that know how to do that. It's not just anybody can send out the standard press release that says park's now open now, or
yeah.
this is a new ride. Anybody can do that, but it's what you do in between that and what you do to keep it top of mind, with the awareness that's out there. I think sometimes the most awareness that you hear about Kings Island now is WLW 700 radio traffic report. Is where you hear Kings Island the most now.
Yeah, back up
Is
near
that
Kings Island. All right, I'm not going there then.
Yeah, but that's where the majority of if you were to have a monitoring service and you check the number of hits and things that they're getting, the majority of them nowadays is going to be traffic reports. So it's not going to be about river racers. It's not going to be about different things. They did another update on river racers. Some of the slides and that the pieces are being delivered. But it's one little paragraph on the blog. There's no storytelling or anything. Nothing they're telling you. What this experience is going to be like and what the next steps are, or anything like that. It's just a small little blurb. Probably took them about 45 seconds to craft it and put it on the website. Where that would have been a huge story. That would have been something that we were able to get on the AP wire, that all these pieces were delivered. This is going to live on their Facebook page, their Twitter, maybe a couple of the local stations might pick it up, but it's not getting outside of the market. That it's another exciting day here at Kings Island, that we've got all these slide pieces are now in place, and it's going to start taking shape, and you're not getting that they did before. Anytime that the ride vehicles came in for a new ride, that was regional news, sometimes national news. Uh, the bent starts going, the first bent in place now for Mystic Timbers, that went everywhere. Um, Diamondback construction, there were updates all the time, but it was a story. It wasn't just a little blurb, it was a story. And then it would kind of go into what Diamondback was going to be and why you wanted to make sure you planned to visit for 2009 to experience this ride. So it was a lot of things like that. So we've gone way off the beaten path with a simple question that we were asked, but yeah, I mean, it's something that I do think the locals, those that buy their season pass specifically for Soak City Water Park, that they're going to like river racers. They're going to like the extra lounge chairs. They're going to like, if you've got young kids, and that, the other new slides that are coming, being built out there. So there's a lot to like.
Would you believe me if I told you there's another listener question, and it's yours?
There is, and it's from Beth from Indianapolis. She says, "Do you think Kings Island made a mistake taking out the vortex?"
Yes, but it would be taken out this off season if it wasn't taken out in 2019.
I think at the time it seemed like the thing to do because it needed a lot of work. It was going to need like a new control panel. So it was a very tough decision, I know, for the general manager, Mike Kuntz. Not something he wanted to do, but it just felt like at the time that it had reached the end of its service life, it was time. But then, after you tear it out, you start to think, was that really the right thing to do? And then there's been no plan for that place, that spot of land. So it's just this open area now, 5, 6, 7 years later. And you look at what Busch Gardens Williamsburg did with Loch Ness Monster. That ride was, just a little bit older than Vortex, but they put the money into it, breathe new life into it. Now it's going to be around for future generations to enjoy. So they chose to preserve history, while Kings Island chose to remove history. So I think now if they had to make that decision again, they wouldn't have done that. But it was understandable at the time why that decision was made.
It wouldn't have been bad if there was a replacement on deck. That's why nobody really complains about Firehawk, because regardless of is it a Giga, is it not a Giga? Regardless of that, Orion is a better ride than Firehawk, and I think that's the general consensus. I'm sure we'll get people in the comments disagreeing, but with Vortex, they removed it hastily without a plan, and it's very apparent. And honestly, here it is 5 seasons later, and it's still an open plot of land. That really, we don't like the addition through subtraction thing, but it really feels like we're going without when it is this huge eyesore right there in the back of the park.
I didn't think in 2019 that we'd be going into the 2025 season without something there. I didn't think it would go that long.
Yeah.
I didn't expect anything before like 2022, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are. So I'm now in that I'm surprised category, but I'm also in that sense that the longer it goes, the better the ride better be that goes in that spot, because now everybody's expecting it to be something special, something great, and if it's not, Doesn't matter what you put in. If it could be a fun ride, it could be a great ride for families, but if it's not meeting that certain expectation of what that space is going to be used for, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people.
Well, hopefully, if my theory dictates, maybe they'll be in a better situation personnel wise once that decision's made, where the people that they have in there that do the marketing of this stuff, they can look at and be like, these people know how to make waves. Let's do something cool. Like every other major park in the chain has that. Kings Island
Yeah.
doesn't right now.
You talk about awareness. We're coming off the meetup that we had at Scene 75 Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
We had several people mention to us that until they listened to Tower Topics, they didn't know certain things were going on in the park.
Yeah.
They didn't know about certain food items. They didn't know about certain events. So, we're getting the word out there the best we can about what they're doing. But that was kind of telling to me that they learned it from us,
Mm-hmm.
not the park, what they were doing there.
Yeah. Well, and like when we did the Q&A, it was like, I think, we're talking about haunt, and one person was saying, I think that they should do it so the new maze is cost money and then the rest are free, but then the next year they'd have another new maze and then the previous one's free. And I was arguing with the person saying, people aren't going to want to pay for what they had free last year, regardless of whatever year it is. And they said, yeah, but what they need to do is they need to make sure that everyone knows that this is a new upgraded cool. And then he kind of like slowed down, like, oh yeah, they don't know how to do that.
That's important. You got to tell people why something's different or why you need to do it. But everything it doesn't matter how old something is at Kings Island, it's a story opportunity for you. And, it's taking the scrambler. There was a time that, I just was like, hey, it's kind of interesting, the history of the scrambler. And let's just do something with that and see if, I get the media to bite. And they did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all over the place. It was in AP picked it up. So it was like in things like the New York Times, and it was just, Kings Island Scrambler or everybody waits until the certain year to say, our 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary, 40th anniversary. I put something out there one year and I just said Kings Island celebrates its 43rd anniversary this year with 2 new rides in Planet Snoopy. So that headline, Kings Island's 43rd anniversary season will include, and it talked about the 2 new rides in Planet Snoopy. So sometimes it's just the way, that you word it. But if you feel like it's important to you, you can use that passion and everything to make it, feel important with how you're communicating that to the news media. And then that's how you get, all those placements and that you just can't send them fluff and that, but they got to be able to sense the passion and feel that, well, he wouldn't have sent it to us unless that was important.
Yeah. Rock is about the passion, man. We learned that from school, Rock. All right, enough of this.
It's not about doing things. What was it? What's he say? It's not about doing things perfect.
Yeah, Rock ain't about doing things perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.